right, so we're joined here by Dana Drew Shaw and a returning guest, the first returning guest, actually. And
I feel very honored and
first thing
privileged, so thank you.
yeah, of course, yeah. And the first thing I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit is this EA Sports kind of the elephant in the room. They're using, CLC to do the agreement, what that looks like. And I guess there's a whole lot of unknowns, but I know you've kind of looked at that a little bit. What can you tell us about that so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two different things that I'll comment on. First of all, I like that EA Sports is aggressively hitting this market because for me, it looks like they're really trying to push the conversation with the name, image, and likeness legislation. And, I think we briefly talked about it before, but if not, there was supposed to be a vote on that earlier this year, and it's got pushed back. So everybody's still kind of holding their breath to see what is going to happen with any type of legislation that the NCAA puts forward. The other thing to mention on the flip side is that we're still waiting for the NCAA versus Alston case that has been given certiorari before the U.S. Supreme Court. So I think March 31st is when that case is set to be argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's
And what
another.
is in that case? What is that one
Yeah, so that's kind of
regarding?
like it's kind of like the extended version of the O'Bannon case. So if you remember back a couple of years ago, the NCAA versus O'Bannon case was actually appealed to the Supreme Court, and they rejected hearing that case and making a decision based on some antitrust issues and the name, image, and likeness of student athletes. And so on the heels of that came the Alston case, which was another name, image, and likeness
Okay.
case. And so now that one has been accepted to the Supreme Court. And so I think that's part of the factor. And then also too, there's been so much talk about Congress actually weighing in and trying to make federal legislation regarding student athletes. And so, I think the NCAA is in a really tough position because they've got our federal government that has this topic on their radar. And so anything that's decided could impact what the NCAA does as well. And so back to your initial question, EA Sports and rebooting college football. First of all, I will say everybody's super excited about it. I've surveyed all my classes that I teach, and the students can't wait to get EA college football back. But I think that there's a lot of moving parts before that actually, hits the video game circuit.
Sure. And anything federal in that sense, that's going to sort of like supersede what the NCAA might be able to do. It might kind of push them to the outside a little bit in the power that they have, or would it kind of just be dependent on what the ruling itself is?
Yeah, I think yes, the federal laws. There's several federal laws that as citizens of the United States, we're all subject to. And so again, I think in an ideal world, there's a collaboration and there's something, and ultimately, in my opinion, if universities are part of the NCAA and the NCAA is the governing body, they should be in the position to make the best decision for their member institutions and for the student athletes. So, I'd like to see this be something the NCAA does that is fair and equitable. But again, since they have not acted on this, that's why I think we see the federal government trying to push it forward and maybe trying to get involved. But like I said, in my opinion, this should be an NCAA decision, and it should be something that the members all are in support of.
Okay. Yeah. And then what does it mean when some of the schools, like some of these large brands like Michigan, Notre Dame, that they've stayed out or kind of said, we're not sure what this is? Is it just that they're not sure what it is, or is there, um, is it something else? What does that look like, sort of?
Yeah,
Or why do you think they're holding out?
yeah, I don't know. Obviously, we kind of touched on this before we got on this podcast, but Michigan and Notre Dame are very recognizable brands. And so I think that there's always this idea of we want to protect our brand and we want to make sure that it's being used in the right way. So I don't know, but from reading the statements on their face, so again, if you go back and you look at the statement that Notre Dame specifically released after EA Sports made this announcement, I think it's honestly a very wise decision to wait and see. So to be very non-committal until they have a better understanding of what the landscape is regarding the name, image, and likeness legislation, whether that's from the NCAA or Congress, or what the Supreme Court even rules in the Alston case. That could really impact, next steps as we roll out any type of game.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, shifting gears a little bit, I know when we first talked, we didn't really know a lot about what the big NCAA sports were going to look like from a sort of a COVID protocol perspective. We didn't even know really if we were going to fully have football and what it was going to look like. And then now we've not only kind of had football, but we've had basketball as well. Like, how do you think that's gone? What kind of things have you seen with the COVID protocols and all of that as we've gone through it?
Yeah, I think when we take a look back at the fall with so many uncertainties, I think that it was successful. They were able to pull off a football season. There was a national championship game. Even from a pro standpoint, we were able to have a Super Bowl. And so I think those returned to normalcy, even though they were scaled back. People were innovative and found ways to make it work. Things like cutouts in the stands, or
Yes.
filtering in the crowd noise, or, just trying to do those little things. And honestly, I think this was really more helpful for society as a whole, just trying to struggle through, kids not being in school. I mean, I know, even my own kids, I got 4, that was a challenge, trying to get them into a new frame of mind of learning. So anything that even resembled a little bit of normalcy. So I think it was such a positive step forward, being able to pull off a football season, for basketball being able to be a go. I think the hardest thing is there's been so many starts and stops for so many programs, that trying to hit your stride, trying to have some continuity or consistency has been hard. But we've seen a lot of resiliency. And honestly, if you look at it from a life standpoint, what a great example of just working through challenges and figuring it out, and not losing hope, not losing sight of an end goal. And obviously for basketball, that's March Madness. And right now we look like we're in pretty good shape to make a case that March Madness is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're close to some programs that had stops and starts, but have now look like they're entering the NCAA tournament in a good position.
Yeah. So obviously, my background is in the basketball world, with my dad being a longtime Hall of Fame coach, and then both my brothers leading Division I programs, and my husband being an assistant coach. So yeah, I've been really blessed this year for Scott, my older brother at Baylor, conference championship. Hopefully they've secured a #1 seeding in the NCAA tournament this year. It was devastating for them last year. They were a projected #1 seed, and when the season got cut
Then
short,
there
that
was no
was,
tournament. Yeah.
yeah, it was heartbreaking. So it's kind of been really exciting to see them continue the momentum that they had last year, and moving into the NCAA tournament this year. So really excited to follow Baylor through the NCAA tournament, and hopefully that doesn't stop until the national championship game. So on the flip side, yeah, my brother Bryce took over a new program here at Grand Canyon University, and so they've had to battle a lot of starts and stops with some COVID issues. So hitting their stride, has been challenging. Rewinding a little bit, Baylor had the same challenge. They missed, I think,
Yeah.
almost 21 days in February. So again, it hasn't been easy, but there's been a lot of resiliency, not just by those 2 teams, but by several teams across the country. And Grand Canyon just won their championship, so they're co-champions of the WAC, and they're heading into their conference tournament. They're in a little bit different situation. They need to win the conference tournament to make the NCAA, but it'd be really fun to be in Indy in a week from now, and being able to watch both Baylor and Grand Canyon.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so Grand Canyon is that I've heard a lot about them in recent years. Is that like a new program, or have they put like sort of a large amount of investment in it recently or something like that? Because I've heard even on like the large like Titus and Tate podcasts and things, you hear a lot about Grand Canyon University.
Yeah.
Has it always been that way? I'm just unfamiliar with it.
No, you know, it started, I think it was an NAIA school for a while, and then competed in Division II. And so they just made the jump to
Okay.
Division I some years ago. And so, you know, they're a newer Division I team. I think if you look at the WAC, and if you're following college athletics, you'll know that conference realignment is really a hot topic right now. There's several schools and conferences that are taking a little bit different shape. And I think because of COVID, we're going to continue to see that. I think we'll see some different conference jumps as well. But the WAC earlier this year announced that they're adding five more, I think it's five more teams, several from Texas, and then they're going to have divisions. And so I think there's been a real conscious effort to align with similar schools geographically too. I think makes sense just from a travel standpoint. And so the
Yeah.
WAC is one of those conferences that has just recently expanded, and next year it'll look a lot different. And they're going to be adding football. I believe this fall they start with a football conference as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So as far as the tournament, we know they're not traveling around and doing it in like the normal regionals that they normally do. Is that correct? It's all going to be in one place, or am I
Yeah,
incorrect
yeah.
about
So
that?
pretty cool this year, actually. I think it's a good model, especially because you know travel is a concern, and making sure they keep the student athletes safe, not just for men's basketball, but also for women's basketball. So let me comment quickly on that. So men is going to be centered out of Indianapolis, and so there are several Indiana schools, so they'll be playing at Purdue. I think they're playing at Ball State as well. IUPUI. So several schools within the
So
state of
Baylor's
Indiana.
going into hostile territory then, as well.
Well, we're originally from Indiana, so we still have a pretty strong
Okay, yeah.
alliance as Hoosiers. Once you're a Hoosier, you're always a Hoosier. I'm not going to lie. And anybody that tries to tell you Indiana basketball isn't the best will not be welcomed in that conversation for very long. So, no, Hoosiers at heart. So going to the homeland really this for the NCAA tournament. Similar to that, the women's basketball tournament's going to be hosted in San Antonio, and they're going to be using the same type of a model with some different venues around San Antonio, but everybody being located in one city, just to cut down on travel, and hopefully to be able to pull off a successful tournament for both the men's and women's side of basketball things.
Yeah, and get all the games in so Baylor can be there at the end, right?
I sure hope so. Yep. We're hoping for that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to add kind of before we jump off here?
No, I would just say, I think the prognosis, the outlook looks really positive going forward. I know a lot of conversations I have with industry professionals are optimistic as to sports, and the other thing I would just say that I love so much about being in the sport world is it does teach you resiliency, and it does teach you a lot of life lessons, and what we've had to go through the last year as a society. I think that having sports is foundational, and really just gives people a sense of not just outlet, but also too a sense of hope. And so again, excited for March Madness to go off, excited for the summer sports, and again, I know we're already looking forward to fall and filling up stadiums again.
Yes, hopefully packed stadiums again. That would be
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.